All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandra Cochran. I'm the current president of the Michigan Business Innovation Association. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the first MBIA member meeting of 2022. While this is billed as a member meeting, we welcome those of you in the audience who are not members, and we hope that you all enjoy the speaker that we have lined up for you today. But first, I want to introduce you to our host, Kevin Rico, the director of Grand Valley State University's Muskegon Innovation Hub. Kevin drives the vision of the hub and is responsible for the overall management of the organization. Prior to joining Grand Valley State University, Kevin served as Allegan County's Director of County Development, where he managed economic development, brownfield redevelopment, parks and recreation, and tourism. Kevin holds a bachelor's degree in natural resource management from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in business administration from Eastern Michigan University. Kevin, can you tell us about the Muskegon Innovation Hub?
Sure, happy to do that. Thanks for that introduction, Sandra, and welcome everybody. We are happy to be your host today. Thanks for all of you for being here. As Sandra said, I am director here at the Muskegon Innovation Hub, which we are part of Grand Valley State University, and we represent the Muskegon Lakeshore Smart Zone. So we've been at it, we've been open since 2003. I've been director here since the fall of 2014. So got a few years under my belt. And Tom is on board. I know he's on the MBIA board, and he's our associate director as well. So if I miss anything, I'm sure Tom will call me out on that. But I wanted to just take a few minutes today and talk a little bit about what we do here at the hub. Obviously, we are in a different part of the state than maybe some of you. So we have a kind of a different, I guess, a different market that we attach into. We've got some urban, a lot of, there's a fair amount of manufacturing here in West Michigan, but there's also a lot of rural. So we have sort of a mixed bag of initiatives and programs and things that we do here at the hub. And before we get started, I wanted to see if I can share my screen here. I wanted to show you a quick 2-minute video. Sandra is telling me host disabled participant screen sharing. Good to go? All right, there we go. Wow, let's see if I can find the right pickup here. That's the wrong one. Let's try this one. So that is not the one I wanted. Let's see if I can try this. There, I promise. It's not letting me get the right tab. Okay, here we go. Let me try this. There we go.
The Muskegon Innovation Hub is a business innovation center, and our goal, our mission, is to work with entrepreneurs, early stage startups, make them become successful.
Kevin, I don't see anything. I still see.
Quite frankly, provide jobs.
I still see the PowerPoint up.
Oh, all right. Well, let me. Operator error. Let me see if I can try something else here.
We can hear it. We can hear it from your computer.
You can hear it, but you can't see it. All right.
Correct. Yep. It might be you had to unshare and then reshare.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's what I'm going to have to do. All right, let me try that again. Let me try that one more time. Isn't that strange? I'm having all kinds of trouble here for some reason. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just run with the PowerPoint because I think I got that down. Can you guys see that all right?
Not right now. Reshare that.
All right, let's try that. There, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right, we're going to run with that. We will run with that for the moment. All right. So as the video is trying to get to, we do a lot of different things here at the hub, and we'll kind of run through some of that through this brief presentation, PowerPoint presentation. Of course, our mission here, and for those who haven't seen our building, there's a good shot from the outside. Obviously, our goal is to work with primarily early stage entrepreneurs and startups. We provide a lot of different aspects of what we do here: co-working, business incubation, access to some pots of funding, and various types of programming. And I will get more into that as we dive in here a little bit. So probably fairly similar on some levels to what a lot of you already do. So I want to talk a little bit about our business incubator program. Obviously, Tom is our primary point person for that. He's our business mentor and coach here at the Hub. So he's the one who works primarily with all of our incubator clients and tenants. We kind of have two parts to this particular program. We have an in-house tenant program. We also have an affiliate client program. Some need bricks and mortar space. Some just sort of want that coaching without needing an office space. They may already have some of that already lined up for themselves, or perhaps they're not ready for that yet. So that's kind of the two aspects of that program. And Tom really does a good job of diving in and really getting at the core of what they're looking for, what they want to do. It's a bit different than some of the other options that might be out there. For example, it's a little bit different than something perhaps the SBDC might offer. There is a modest fee for this program, but it is a bit more intense. Tom typically meets weekly with all of our incubator clients. And it's a very intensive program. There's a lot of homework that Tom does. There's a lot of homework that's expected of our entrepreneurs as well. And really it's kind of developing that business model piece, defining the audience and all of those characteristics that go with sort of building that business from the ground up. And so these are some of the bullets of kind of what I was talking about, some of the things that Tom gets into, the coaching mentoring piece. We try to do a lot with business-to-business connectivity, either with other members or other businesses throughout the community that might perhaps their service providers that entrepreneur could benefit from having that relationship. Obviously, we do some marketing programming and some other things here. As an incubator client, they have access to our building as a workspace. They can also use it for free meeting space. That's included as a part of their membership in our program. So they can also use our building as a business address. So sometimes that's preferable to using your house or a PO box. It gives a little more credibility to your organization, what you're trying to build. So we can provide some of those. It's kind of a broad stroke of what we provide. Obviously, there's other parts to that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. These pictures were taken some time ago. You'll see a few empty offices. These are all full. We've actually had to build, since these photos were taken, we've created 8 new private office spaces. They are all full, and we have a wait list currently for those spaces. So it's really, it's taken off with some of the things that we're trying to do here. And so you can get a feel, though, for what some of our private office space looks like throughout the Hub here at our facility. So one of the pieces we added to our program in 2016 was a co-working space. We were working with institutional marketing here at Grand Valley. And as any of you know that work with a large university, they're very protective of the brand identity, and we understand that. But we were able to work with them and sort of create a sub-brand, which we call Colaunch. That's the brand of our co-working space. And with that, we've got about 55,000 square feet. Some of that is open office space that has private desks, open seating. We also include some private offices that are a part of that as well. And again, we're always looking for ways to enhance that experience. We get very involved with our co-working space members. Obviously, much as other facilities and organizations, COVID has sort of thrown a monkey in the wrench for us. We've lost a few, although I will tell you, it's not as many as we would have expected of our co-launch members, and most of them stayed, and we've been able to add several new members as well. We're starting to see a change and a shift, as all of you can probably attest. That remote working option is out there. It's not going to go away. I think early on, folks were happy to work from home. And then I think a lot of people realized that working from home is not always optimal. And you still want to have some connection to a business space. You need some business type facilities and resources. And so we kind of have created that environment here in the Hub. And these are just a bullet of some of the, we have a few different membership tiers, which I'll get to here in a minute, but all of our co-working members have access to all of these items. Of course, and much more than that, they get access free. They get to attend all of our programming for free. There's no charge for that. And we do a lot of community-only events, members-only events. And I'll touch on some of that here in a minute as well. So really just trying to build in some of these features to make it feel like home, but still a place to do a good day's work and have access to some other business items and business equipment that you might need. So one of the things that I want to touch on, this was new for us. We opened this space in August of last year. Sort of anecdotally, we recognized that, back that up even a little bit further, there's a very large contingent of entrepreneurial artists here along the lakeshore in West Michigan. And one of the things that we sort of discovered anecdotally, either talking to artists or other people in the community, that there was a very short supply of affordable, functional artist studio space. Just so happened we had about a 2,000 square foot space on the back of our building that we, over the years, have struggled to find a tenant for. It's kind of it's almost more of a light industrial kind of space. We've had tenants work out of that space in the past, but it's been a struggle to find the right fit for it. So we kind of landed on this concept of, hey, could we convert this space into working artist studio space? We started to have conversations with local artists here in Muskegon. We also worked with the art department at Grand Valley. We started to get input on things that the space would need to make it functional and practical for our artist residents. And so we ended up being able to create 5 semi-private studio spaces. They're all about 215 square feet or so. Our artists have 24/7 access to the space. It is in one room, but it is a secure access to it. So they can leave their equipment and supplies there without having to worry about anybody having access to it other than the artists themselves. It does have kind of some other unique features. It's got a large overhead door to our loading dock. So if somebody is working in a particularly large medium sculpting, when they want to do quick in and out of materials, they have access to that. So we've got 3 of the 5 spaces currently filled. We're looking to hopefully onboard a couple of new ones in the next few months, perhaps as we get into the springtime. But the artists that are in the space right now really seem to enjoy it. And we also want to start doing some, artist-specific programming. We recognize that here in West Michigan, our artist entrepreneurs are a valuable part of our community. In fact, if you've ever been to Muskegon or you get an opportunity to come to Muskegon, there's a high level of priority placed on public art and private art and public spaces. And so you will see works of art all over our community. So it's a very dialed in, very connected community to the artists here along the lakeshore. They're all very good at their craft, but those that are just getting started might not be so good from the business side of it. So our goal is to hopefully do a little bit more specialized programming geared towards our artist entrepreneurs here on the lakeshore, and try to teach them the business aspects of it. Maybe that's bringing in established artists. How do you get your works in a gallery? How do you market yourself? That sort of thing, specifically related to that creative artist side of things. So we're excited about the space, and we're excited to see how this evolves over the coming couple of years and see where we move into with this. So these are just some general items that we provide as part of our co-working space. And of course, also all of our incubator clients have access to these things as well. These are just some examples of programming items that we've done and we continue to do from time to time. Launch lecture series, Marketing Mondays. We also have a program here that helps entrepreneurs perfect their pitch. We bring in a small panel. They do their pitch to that panel, and then that panel provides critiquing and asks questions and sort of helps them refine that pitch and get it to where they need to be, depending on what type of funding they're going for. Maybe it's a pitch event, or maybe it's just simply they're going to be pitching traditional funding, traditional lending, or venture capital, whatever, or even presenting to our own Muskegon Angels. So we help them refine that pitch and really dial in on the important aspects of that. And of course, as I mentioned, we also do a lot of social networking pieces here, hub happy hours, Taco Tuesdays, hub mastermind groups, again, really focusing on building that community. Of course, we find ourselves, as I mentioned, trying to, in a way, sort of build that back. We still have a number of members that are still a little bit uncomfortable with the current state of things regarding the pandemic. And so we even though we've got some really practical and really high level sanitary and cleaning protocols here in our building. We understand that discomfort, and so we try to work with that. But at the same time, we also notice that people are really craving that social piece, which we had really built up a terrific core group of that right before the pandemic. So we're trying to find ways to bring that back and help people feel comfortable in whatever the new normal will be as we start to come out of this a little bit more. So these are kind of our membership tiers, everything from a drop-in for the day to artist studio space to office space, and everything in between. Some levels of membership have 24/7 access, some are just business day only. So it really depends on what works best for you and your needs at that time. So this is some general photos of our Colaunch Space. Gives you an idea. We were able to kind of create a brand and a logo identity with it. You can see some of our desk space and some other, we've got space to collaborate as a part of this as well. So funding assistance, obviously, as a Smart Zone representative, we work with Business Accelerator Fund clients on a regular basis. The Muskegon Angels also call our facility home. So we've had the opportunity to prep some clients and make some referrals to the Muskegon Angels. So that's been helpful. And then, of course, obviously, just other connections through MEDC and other programs and other partners out here, quite frankly, in the ecosystem that we can tap into, you know, from a funding assistance perspective. That always seems to be the #1 priority, even though there's maybe 5 or 6 steps they need to really cover before they get to this piece. But funding is always our #1 question when we get a new client or a new member here at our facility. So kind of another sort of side aspect of what we do here at the Hub, we do have about 3,000 square feet of training and event space. We use it for our programming and events that we put on here at the Hub, but we also have it available to community organizations. In fact, there's a large group meeting here today, so it's a considerable benefit to the community. We really pride ourselves in trying to stay current with the highest level of technology from AV perspective. We're also right now researching equipment acquisition for creating that hybrid meeting space. We know we sort of feel that that's kind of here to stay. It's not going away. And I'm sure we've all taken part in those hybrid Zoom/in-person meetings. I've yet to be a part of one that hasn't felt a bit clunky. So we're trying to find a way to bring in some equipment and some technology, quite frankly, that we can not only do good productions for the programs that we want to do, but organizations that want to come in from the outside and do the same thing. We almost look at it perhaps as even enhancing our revenue stream if we can provide that type of service to outside organizations looking to do hybrid meetings. So just a little bit more about our space. Like I said, about 3,000 square feet. We got small conference rooms all the way up to a room that accommodates about 100 people. So we've got some pretty relatively large space here, and it has, you know, when we kind of ebb and flow through the pandemic, or certainly before the pandemic, the space was in high demand. So we're starting to see that pick back up a little bit now again. So that's good for us, and it's also good for the community. And there's just some general shots of our space, give you a feel for what that might look like. And here is our team. I mentioned Tom already, and of course, Allison, she's our business incubator manager. And Tom Hall down there in the lower left, he is our facilities person. So he helps out from a facilities and also technology person. And I certainly can't forget Katie Walker. She is our new admin assistant here at the Hub. She started in July. We're very happy to have her on board. She brings a kind of a new skill set for us here at the Hub. She's a bit more into the technology piece as well as some other things. And so we're happy to have Katie on board and continue to build our team and our brand here at the Hub. So I know I kind of spun through that very quickly, and I'm sorry I couldn't get the video up and running for you all, but I pretty much covered all of that anyway. Happy to answer any questions if you have any specific about what we do, or if maybe I missed something.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Kevin.
My pleasure. And again, thanks for being here, and we're happy to host it today.
Yeah, Kevin, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
That was a great summary. Just awesome. Really well done. You mentioned like in one of your very first slides, for a more in detail discussion, there was some sort of fee or something. Can you explain that? or
Yeah.
what that is?
Yeah, sure. I was referring to our business incubator program, and Tom, if he wants to jump in here a little bit, I will let him do that since he sort of is our main primary point person on that program. But it's a little bit different than, say, working with SCORE or working with SBDC. We appreciate all of the work that they do. And those are fee-free programs, which is fantastic. But I think when you're ready for a bit more intensive program, something that is a lot more hands-on and one-on-one, very intensive, again, with homework assignments and all of that sort of thing. That's kind of what we do here, and that's what kind of Tom prides himself on. So it's just a little bit more intense. It's designed to maybe take you beyond what SCORE might get you to, or take you beyond what SBDC might get you to. It's just a little bit more than that with that one-on-one. And of course, Tom will also connect with other resources on the outside as we need to as well. So we'll be need to bring in some horsepower from the outside. We've got those connections, and we can do that. And I think it's just a way we kind of hold those clients accountable. And I think because they have a small fee as a part of it, they have a little skin in the game. So there's the tendency to be a bit more serious about it. It's kind of a way that we can somewhat weed out those that are more serious from those that aren't. So that's kind of how we view it, as well as just that intensive training piece.
Yeah, no, I get it completely. That's one of the reasons we do like matches and the right, because when you have free money, it just, for whatever reason, it doesn't really have the same impact unless you have some skin in the game. But can you share roughly what that cost is? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we just changed that. So if you're an affiliate client, and Tom, do you want to speak to this as long as you're on board here?
Yeah, sure. So for the affiliate clients, it's $150 a month for 6 months, or for up to 6 months. And then we have a different sort of agreement after that, which includes a revenue sharing clause. For tenants, it's more based on the square footage. So it depends on how much space they're renting. But that also includes the revenue sharing right from the beginning.
Thank you. Well, for the interest of time, we're going to move on to our speaker, but there will be time at the end for Q&A. And if we need to bring in Kevin or Tom at the end also for Q&A with them, that would be fine. But so thank you, Kevin and Tom, for sharing your wonderful program with us. Clearly, Muskegon Innovation Hub has got a whole lot going on. You guys are doing great work up there. But now I'd like to move on and introduce our guest speaker for today, Eric Dougal. Eric is a risk management advisor with Hub International, a top 5 global insurance brokerage firm. Eric is passionate about helping startups to understand risks to their businesses and identifying insurance solutions to solve exposures to those risks throughout the entire life cycle of an organization. Eric works with clients in life sciences, technology, and manufacturing industries, from startup to mid-market to maturity or exit. He's involved in the startup community through my incubator, WMed Innovation Center, as well as his participation in community programs such as 1 Million Cups Kalamazoo. And with that, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. First, want to just say thank you to the MBIA and to Kevin and Sandra for having me on. Sandra, I was thinking about it today. You and I have been working together for like 5 or 5.5 years in all sorts of various ways. And it's been fun. I really enjoy it. Let me see if I can share my screen here. You'd think after, however many years of COVID, we'd have the digital world completely figured out at this point, but there we go. It's great when technology works out. So once again, I'm really excited to be here. I'm really glad to speak with you and share kind of some of my passions about risk management and insurance in kind of this startup and incubator space. This is me. There's my picture. It's a little older. I'm realizing that I should probably get a new headshot, but that's pre-COVID headshot. As Sandra mentioned, I work with Hub International. We're a global insurance brokerage firm. We place over 20 billion in insurance premiums worldwide. And really, my role is about, helping clients manage risks, right? We can identify that risk, we avoid it, we reduce it, we transfer it, and really just trying to put a holistic view for all of my clients and really trying to impact them and help them grow. At the end of the day, I want to be somebody they can count on and somebody they can rely on to bring them accurate information and help them grow and help connect them with other clients of ours to see them grow. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Being an insurance nerd, I could talk about coverages and contract language all day long, but I don't want to put anybody to sleep, and I'm not sure we have more than about 20 minutes left in this presentation. So here's what our goals are going to be today. We're going to talk real briefly about understanding how a sound risk management and insurance program supports the mission of your incubator, and then look at common pitfalls where incubators and clients can face challenges with insurance, specifically as it looks at the life cycle of a company from early stage all the way to exit and or maturity. All right, so the mission of an incubator. All right, we got to see Kevin's explanation of what the Muskegon Innovation Hub's mission was, but in short, the mission is to support an entrepreneurial environment that stimulates growth. Right, it's about accelerating growth and helping entrepreneurs kind of, I guess the short version would be live out their dreams, right? Grow their companies and live out their dreams. So as we look at that, how can you as incubators take care of client tenants under this incubator model? So there's really two pieces that we're going to look at. We're going to look at risk management and we're going to look at insurance, right? And those support the growth of these incubator clients because any sort of glitch in those that causes where there's a claim or there's something that comes up will absolutely take that growth and grind it to a halt. And in some cases, even just squash out that dream entirely. And so risk management is really important. So as we look at the incubator, one of the things that's really important for you as incubators is for a lot of your clients, this is their first introduction to insurance, right? And the reason that they're purchasing it is because you're requiring them to have it, right? There's a contractual component that goes into your lease agreement that says, hey, you got to at least carry these minimum requirements. So that's an important piece to it. Certificate tracking, right? As an organization, now that you've required your tenants to have these coverages, how are we tracking it and making sure that nothing comes up where there's an uncovered claim because of a lapse in coverage? How are you tracking that? How are you keeping tabs on your clients to make sure that they're keeping their insurance up to date, right? Property management's about risk management, right? How do we prevent slips and falls? We have visitors on site. Who's taking care of the interior and the exterior of the property? What happens if there's a breakdown in that, right? A client slips and falls and breaks a leg, is out of the office for an extended period of time. They're the only employee currently managing this project. Things start to slip through the cracks. So ultimately, it's in your best interest, right, to keep a property that is a safe environment for your clients. Processes and procedures that may be involved around sharing equipment. What does that look like, right? Kevin alluded to it earlier. There's shared equipment and shared resources that you have. How do we protect those for the benefit of all of the clients? And what happens if there's a piece of equipment that breaks because tenant A breaks it? What does that look like? How does that handle? And how do we make sure that we can get everything up and running again to protect our clients? And then last is truly understanding client operations, right? Because not every startup is the same. Not every startup has the same risks. And ultimately, it's on you as the incubator to know what sort of risks are we taking on in our facility, right? Are we taking on an environmental risk that most of our organizations don't have, that's going to require additional coverage for us or additional exposures for us, or is going to expose our group to some sort of risk that could adversely affect them? So that's the risk management piece, right? How do we manage that risk? And then the last piece is how do we transfer it, right? And so for incubators, the risk profile is pretty basic, right? You have property, right? Part of that property is borrowed or shared equipment, right? We need to protect the building and the assets that we have. General liability, right? Anybody that comes on site, whether it's speaking engagements, whether it's, as Kevin referenced, renting out the facility for, some sort of outside group to come in and do a presentation. Are we covered in case somebody slips and falls? Do we have adequate limits? How do we benchmark against similar organizations and protect our assets? Workers' compensation, you have employees, Workers' compensation is an employee benefit. We want to make sure that we have adequate coverage to cover them in the event that something happens. Talked a little bit about general liability and limits. Umbrella, the umbrella coverage fits right in that. Sits over the top. Do we have enough coverage to cover us in the event of a catastrophic event? Cyber liability is often one that gets overlooked. Cyber protects data. So in the event that you get hacked, your systems get locked down, or employee data, client data gets put out in the public, this protects you and makes you whole again and helps you make them whole again. So it protects you and your clients. So considerations for an incubator. And these are thoughts that came to the top of my mind as I was thinking about this presentation. Number one, accelerated growth is an inherent risk from an insurance perspective. Typically, when we're so focused on growth, other things kind of fall through the cracks. We're on a trajectory like this. We're not always thinking about insurance. In fact, insurance is usually about the 15th item down the list of that, and that creates risk to both the client and the incubator. All right, needs for different types of startups vary differently by industry, right? So we have tech startups, life science startups. You might have professional services startups. Your whole, or in Kevin's case, you might have artists coming in and running your space. All of those are all very different. And so making sure that we have consideration about what those different industries are and how we can help impact them is huge. And then this is one that I'm really passionate about. The insurance service model for small businesses varies significantly from small business to middle market. And from that perspective, startups, especially in tech and life science, often fall through the cracks or don't receive the attention that they need given how quickly their exposures change. And we'll talk through that a little bit more when we get to the life cycle of a company. All right, this next piece, I gotta move my screen just a little bit here so that I can see exactly what's on there. Communicating a sound risk management philosophy to the incubator clients, right? So once again, you're the first line of defense for them. The reason they're purchasing an insurance in a lot of cases is because you've told them that they need to. And so when you communicate your risk management philosophy and strategy as you transfer that risk to them, that helps them as they develop and think about how they manage risks throughout their life cycle. And then a gap in coverage can significantly impact cash flow. And at the end of the day, we know, as Kevin indicated, funding, right? Everybody's interested in funding. We need cash to grow, and any sort of uncovered claim that can impact cash can really negatively impact that growth trajectory for a client. And then the thing that I want you to get out of this, we need to be thinking about evaluating our risks throughout the life cycle of a company. Because if we're not thinking about it, we're not continuously evaluating this throughout the year as the growth happens, we're going to end up with gaps that are going to negatively affect the organization. All right, so now we're going to jump into kind of the life cycle of a startup from an insurance perspective. All right, specifically from an insurance perspective, and looking at kind of how we view those organizations. So, startup discovery phase. All right, you have an idea or a concept, and you want to test it out. Right, this is brand new. From our perspective, you're a transactional buyer. Right, I think of this as my wife says, "Hey, Eric, will you go to the store and pick me up an orange? I need it for a recipe." Right, and I'm like, "Well, what kind of orange do you want? Does it, like, do you just need one? And she's like, "I don't care, just get me an orange." Right, and that's really what a transactional buyer is from an insurance perspective. I know that I need A, B, and C, and I need it cheap. Whatever you can get me to satisfy my need, least expensive. Coverage isn't really an issue because at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot there to cover, right? The limits and the coverages are required by contract. It's either going to be through you as the incubator, or it's going to be through their, they may have one customer that kind of asked them to do something and said, "Hey, here are the minimum requirements that our legal team says you need to carry." The assets are minimal. At the end of the day, if there was a catastrophic claim that came through, that owner's just probably walking away. They're out, whatever their initial investment was, maybe a piece of equipment or two, and they're turning around, they're dropping the mic, and they're back out, and they'll start up another LLC with their next idea moving along. Sales are pretty minimal. Whatever you're producing may not even be viable at this point. Still doing research. The only employees of the group, it may be one, it may be two, but they're stakeholders, they're owners in the entity. So the risk profile is really straightforward. From that perspective, the needs for a startup from an insurance perspective are, they're just a basic package policy, right? It's mainly general liability, maybe a little bit of property for personal, business personal property that you have on site, a couple computers, maybe one small piece of equipment. There may be coverage in there for an auto. Work comp is usually required by an incubator, but in this startup phase and with the state of Michigan, as an owner in the organization, you can waive work comp, and most places will accept that. So that's one of the things we always let clients know is, is this absolutely a mandatory requirement, or is this something you can waive with a waiver form from the state of Michigan? That's pretty much it. At that point, a little bit of GL coverage with products completed, which would cover you for property damage or injury, is going to be included in there, but it's not really a concern for that startup just yet. Next, we kind of move into that early stage. All right, you're still a transactional buyer. There's nothing out there that's really changed how you look at insurance strategically. Limits and coverages purchased, they're still determined by contract. It's just whether or not it's only the incubator contract or whether it's clients that are in that space determining which limits you buy. Your assets are starting to grow a little bit, right? The client now has a little bit more interest. The idea has been developed. There's been time, there's been energy, there's been investment. They're a little bit more interested in limiting that liability, and they're thinking about things just a little bit more strategically. Now we have some production, we have some sales, we have some activity that's going on. It's growing. We may be taking on additional clients. All of a sudden now that product's liability is a little bit more important. The product in the market is in the market or in various degrees of production, which makes us think a little bit differently about if we take in a raw material and we turn it into something else, there's various stages, and the value of what's in that can change throughout the life cycle. So we buy something for $1 and then we sell it for $3. If it's halfway through, what's the value of that item in the event of a loss? And so your property coverages are going to go up a little bit. Your staff's going to begin to grow. Now you're hiring 1 or 2 individuals to do some of the work that initially the ownership handled. All right, now all of a sudden you need that workers' compensation. They're still a transactional buyer. Assets are growing. Things to be thinking about, right? It's that basic package. Product liability is a must. Workers' compensation. Now maybe a little bit of cyber, maybe not a standalone policy, but a piece that adds in a little bit to make sure that we're covered. Now that we have employees, we're starting to look at employment practices liability, but we're probably still a little early stage from that. We're still thinking about how do we take this from where we're at today to what that next step is. So the risk profile is changing, so are the insurance needs. This is where I see the biggest pitfall, right here in that growth or scale stage. So, all right, our transactional buyers now starting to think a little bit more strategically. Oftentimes, how they view their risk management program is a little bit delayed throughout this process. They usually get that growth really starts to ramp up before that entrepreneur really starts to think, well, how have my risks changed during this process? All right, our limits and our coverages that are purchased, right? Still looking at contract, right? But we're also looking at, I really need to protect our business. I need to protect our assets. All right. Now I have something to lose, right? There's profit there. There's a ton of time and energy that's gone into it. We need to make sure we have adequate limits. The second piece of that is, now that we have that piece in place, all of a sudden we'll start to see a little bit larger groups, right? I have an idea, we've pitched it, we're starting to produce these things, and then somebody reaches out. I have a client on the West Coast that's a technology related company. They were doing about $500,000 a year. They're kind of in this, pre-growth, starting to get into this growth phase. And they hooked a client that was a Fortune 500 client. Boom. All of a sudden, their exposure and what they were required to carry by contract jumped from 1 million to 2 million to 10 million. They were required to carry 5 million in cyber, 10 million in technology, errors and emissions, professional liability, right? And so their jump literally went from here to here from a contractual perspective. Assets are growing rapidly, right? Now we're talking about, right, how are we funding this growth, right? Are we taking on additional stakeholders or investors? What does that look like? And so from that perspective, when we take on additional stakeholders, right, now we have to protect those people as well, right? And so from that perspective, more people involved. The moment I take on funding and I bring people on, now all of a sudden I have a management liability exposure. And we refer to management liability as directors and officers, right? Anytime you bring anybody onto a board or take on funding, they're going to require that you carry that. Directors and officers is a very specialized coverage. So for our team, you know, we're blessed to have a team out of Chicago that just focuses on management liability. And our standard policy has 25 enhancements over an off-the-shelf standalone policy, which that means if you're relying on me to do it, you're struggling. But because I can rely on our team, there's going to be additional enhancement that protect the client further in those types of policies. All right, rapid growth, expansion into new opportunities, right? So I think that we're headed from here to here, from A to B, and pretty soon I see that there's an opportunity to go from A to D, right? I may jump into a new industry. I may look at expanding rather than just going vertical. I may start expanding horizontally. That makes incredible difference in our risk profile because some carriers are very comfortable with one industry and absolutely will not touch the other. There can be exclusions on policies for various industries. So we want to make sure that as we're thinking about that growth, we're thinking about that, how that impacts our risk profile. All right, significant product in the market and also inventory. So when we're now making and ratcheting up our inventory and keeping things on site, all of a sudden our property needs to keep up with it, right? So all of a sudden we were purchasing a couple $100,000 in property, and now all of a sudden we have $1 million worth of inventory. Are we planning for that? Do we know what that looks like? Because if we don't, and there's a loss, and you're capped, you got $1 million in inventory, and you got $100,000 in coverage, that's going to put a significant impact on your growth plans. All right, staffing needs continue to increase. Now we're talking about employment practices liability, claims of wrongful termination, discrimination, those types of first-party claims, but then third-party claims. I had a client get sued because their website was not compliant for the blind. I didn't know that was a thing until I had to go through that claim. That's a thing. It's a real thing, and there's law firms out there who've created algorithms to identify websites that are not compliant. Well, when you're in pre-growth or early stage, they don't really care because you're not worth anything to them. All of a sudden, now you're in a growth phase. You have funding. You have an idea that's more secure and that's worth something. That's when those groups will start to come after you. So making sure that you have coverage for those types of things and that you're managing that risk appropriately as we get going. All right. Last, rapid change over a 12-month period, right? So when we write policies, they're for a 1 year, 12 months, right? And if during that 12-month period, you go from early stage to scale stage, 6 months in, your profile has has really accelerated and changed greatly. And so if we don't keep up to date with that, you may be halfway through the year with no coverage for literally half of the operations that you're doing. So really being diligent about looking at it, especially during this stage, is incredibly important. All right, and then the last is maturity stage, right? So now you're starting to be, you're much more strategic. You understand what your industry is about. You understand what you're producing. Your limits and coverages purchased. They're protecting your assets or protecting your exit strategy, right? At the end of the day, startups are doing one of two things. They're trying to get to the point where they're a mature company and they're going to continue to operate, or they're trying to get to a certain point. All right, we're selling it, we're taking our money, and then we're starting another one and doing something else. And so making sure that you have coverage to protect that exit strategy is important. All right, Now your assets are maturing. And there's all sorts of different ways that we can look at how we're financing risk. So early on, you're just transferring it. You don't want anything to do with it. You're passing it all on to the insurance company. As you get to be a little bit bigger, you start to realize that the amount of money that you're paying in premium to the insurance company may not be the most efficient way to manage risk. So now we can start to look at, and this is really where it gets fun, is how do we put those puzzle pieces together and figure out how much risk can you retain that in the case of a loss won't financially impact you at a significant level. Transferring risk to the insurance company is not the most efficient way to manage risk, right? Like any other organization, there's a chunk of that is administrative costs, right? For every dollar you spend, there might be 15 to 20 cents that are spent by the insurance company on administrative costs. So we can look at alternative ways to finance your risk that can improve cash flow and help you continue to grow. All right, we have an established product. Our sales are continuing to grow. All of a sudden, there might be another piece that comes in. All of a sudden, now we're going to sell this product or this service to some international exposures, right? Once again, risk profile changes a little bit more. What countries are we doing business with? We might look at how do we protect our balance sheet with account receivables, right? There's a piece out there called credit insurance, right? And you might be in a situation where you're uncomfortable extending a line of credit past a couple $100,000 to a client because they make up 70% of your sales. And if they were to go default, you would be bankrupt in a heartbeat. Well, we can insure a piece like that and get a limit where you're maybe a little more comfortable, and you tell your salespeople, all right, let's maximize what we can do with this company because we're protected on the receivable side. You have significant product in the market, right? We talked about product liability. Inventory changes a little bit already. There's going to be more and more ways to transfer that risk and cover it from point to point, right? We can cover it in your warehouses. We can cover it while it's being trucked until it's in your customer's hands. And there's avenues to do that that drive efficiency. And that's really where we're at. The focus is on efficiency and risk reward, not just on transferring that risk. Whew. All right. I put a lot on the table right there. Here are the key takeaways, right? Proper risk transfer protects both the incubator and the client, right? Let's get that right. It's contractual. Let's make sure that insurance is purchased. Let's make sure that we're monitoring what is purchased, that it's up to date, and we're collecting certificates of insurance. As I look at and advise clients, incubator clients, they're not always the best fit to work with me. But we like to assist in any way we can. But what I always tell them, what I always tell an incubator is identify a partner that can support you throughout the life cycle of your company, but also identify a partner that can help you grow. And being able to do that and be able to support both incubators and incubator clients is, it's that relationship piece, it's that understanding piece that's going to help reduce that risk. And ultimately, over the course of the life cycle, also reduce the total amount that you pay. Life cycle, right? We got to understand what that life cycle is, how growth can affect risk and insurance, and really think about it in certain stages. Once you complete a stage, we got to be thinking about or having a conversation around, hey, has anything changed? What does this look like? And then understanding how the growth can create gaps in insurance coverage and how to avoid those pitfalls. It's really about just constant vigilance. And as incubators, you guys play such a huge role in helping these entrepreneurs identify and understand what risks are out there and how best to transfer them. Whew, and there's my contact information.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eric. That was really great. We've got about 5 minutes or so, 5-6 minutes for questions. Does anyone have a question for Eric?
We do not offer Taco Tuesdays, but I'm thinking about including it for clients because it does sound like a fantastic idea.
Love it. Anyone? Any thoughts? Any questions?
And if you don't want to bring up a question or if you want to reach out, we're happy to help, happy to jump on a call and answer any individualized questions or talk specifically about, specific risks or kind of processes and procedures that we go through to really make sure that, we support our clients kind of throughout that life cycle.
Actually, I got a quick question for you, Eric. You kind of mentioned a number of scenarios from early stage, obviously, to maturity and kind of all of those in between. Can you think of an example, and I'm certainly not asking you to name names, but maybe where a client wasn't quite as diligent as they should have been, and maybe a cautionary tale as to what that looked like for them by not following through with what they should have?
I think what we saw more than anything in the last kind of 3 years, and certainly in the last 12 months, is related to cyber insurance. We were pushing it hard 5 years ago, but some of our clients just either couldn't wrap their head around how they had exposure, or didn't understand, or weren't willing to purchase and pay for something that they just didn't see value in. And all of a sudden now we're in this last 12 months, we've seen a huge uptick in cyber claims. And we're now at the point where, 2 years ago, Kevin, I could get you coverage with 3 data points. And 2 of those data points I could pull off your website. And now we're at the point where these groups are scanning your system from the outside to figure out whether you're a good risk, to figure out whether you're using multi-factor authentication. And so if you didn't purchase it before, now all of a sudden it's 3 times more expensive, where if you had it in place, the carrier has already seen some profit, and they're just going to ask you, hey, do this, this, and this, and you're going to see a modest increase. And so I think some of those pieces can be critical. And I would say the other one would be looking at our property, right? As we buy new equipment, as we invest more things, that's another key area. As that changes, we got to protect that. And yes, it's going to be more cost, but if it goes down, the financial impact is going to be greater. And then the last how it's rated, let's say it's sales, and you're doing $5,000 in sales, and then at the end of the year, right, that last 3 months, huge increases, and all of a sudden now you're doing, $500,000. It blew up. Well, what a lot of organizations don't understand is those policies are auditable. And so that rate you were paying down here for 5,000 is now multiplied, right? And you're going to pay a significant amount more. And a lot of organizations don't understand how that factors in. And so I did have a client in the life sciences space that, was doing some things with COVID, right? And they got into it, and they thought they were going to be here. And of course, we know that the need for COVID services was up here. And they went from, $1 million to $8 million in that space almost overnight, right? And so they got hit at the end of the year with a pretty significant bill. Fortunately, they understood that's how it was rated, and they didn't come back and go, Eric, what are you doing? Because we're having that conversation. This is auditable. We want to get it as close as possible. We don't want to give the insurance company a free loan, but we also don't want to be hit with a bill that's huge at the end of the year. So I think those are a couple of areas that, would be the biggest examples.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great question. Does anyone else have a question? No. Carmen, are you still with us? If so, I am going to actually turn this over to you and let you wrap it on up.
I am with you guys. Hi, everyone. I'm Carmen, and I am the vice chair of the MBIA, and welcome. I really appreciate everybody being here with us today for our, as Sandra said, the first virtual member meeting of 2022. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the MBIA in this next minute or so, and tell you a little bit about our mission and what we hope to achieve every year, and then tell you a little bit about our memberships and what's up next for the MBIA. So our mission is to support and promote activities related to business incubators, accelerators, smart zones, co-working spaces, and other entrepreneurial service organizations here in Michigan. We have been around for decades doing this work across the Michigan ecosystem. You probably have known us for a lot of our in-person member meetings, our annual member meeting where we host a day's worth of workshops across the state, as well as our alignment with the Great Lakes International Innovation Association, where we host a fall 2-day workshop every year with other innovation programs from the Great Lakes region and other states. We are the voice of entrepreneurship in Michigan. We want to be able to be networked and connected with the ecosystem. We listen and learn from everybody's needs and evolving ecosystem challenges and resources, and we feed those resources back into the community. We would love to be able to integrate with your programs as much as possible to be able to project your message across the state. That's why we pivoted to virtual member meetings. We can kind of create this content and share it with folks who are not able to attend with us today. We're hoping as the pandemic, as we get through the pandemic, we're able to meet again in person, and please stay tuned for any in-person meetings we're having, but we're continuing to plan virtual meetings as well. We will have our annual member meeting. Please stay tuned for how that's going to take place and where it's going to take place and how you can join coming up in May. We'll continue to plan these virtual member meetings where you can learn a little bit more about programs across the state. And if you're interested in membership, we'd love for you to connect with us. Please reach out to Sandra or myself or Bonnie or Tom or anybody else who's on the board. We'd be happy to connect you with ways for you to connect with the association and join the ecosystem that we have created here. I think with that being said, since we're short on time, usually we like to do a little bit of a mixer here. Maybe if everybody could just quickly drop their name into the chat and which organization that they're from, and people can get a chance to see who's there. And again, this recording will be shared on our website and shared with members in the future. And so if you want to pass this along, we'd be happy to share it with other people who are not here today. I just want to give one other huge thank you to Kevin Rico and Eric Dougal, and certainly Tom Hopper for presenting today. We greatly appreciate not only the hosting for the Muskegon Innovation Hub, but also Eric, all the good information that you presented with us today. It was wonderful, and it looks like we'll be sharing all the content that was made available today with everybody. And with that, I wish everybody a good afternoon, and we look forward to crossing paths again with you in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.